It's really about technology-based economic development. More and more places get better and better broadband. What does that actually mean for our communities and for our economies? How does that impact the people that we can attract or companies that we can attract or retain into our communities? What's different as a result of these investments by communities and providers in the state of Minnesota? And that's a key consideration. I think it seems like a long time ago, but just 2 days ago, BLandin talked about one of my analogies of the exercise bike in the basement, and everyone who's worked with me has heard that. That's the idea that you can buy infrastructure, but you can't buy fitness. You have to get on that bicycle and ride it, or the elliptical, or whatever it is you're doing. Because without it, without the exercise, without the commitment to change, the personal change, you're still the same place, but just with a faster YouTube connection. And we all want more than that. So today we have a couple regional planners from places that have had very active broadband projects, programs of trying to improve broadband services. We have Cheryl Hills from the Region 5 Development Corporation. They've been kind of a unique actor in pulling together different folks to make broadband happen in the region, a very aggressive approach. And Kurt Boostrom from the Upper Minnesota Valley Regional Development Commission, and they're a great example of the haves and the have-nots in a region. 3 of their counties are in the top 10 for broadband, and 2 in the bottom 10. And here they are. I've got to say, culturally, they're kind of the same people. The geography is very similar, you know, and so it's just because of community leadership and opportunity, willing providers, the right mix of things happening in some counties, and something missing from those other counties that makes it for a lesser broadband environment. So I'm just going to turn it over to Cheryl to start and talk about your Region 5 efforts on broadband, and how you've leveraged those now in economic development strategies.
Thanks, Bill. Thanks for all of you for being here. It's so fun to see so many friends, and I really mean this when I say it. Thanks for your work. It's really cool. It's a lot of you are doing some amazing things, so thank you for that. A couple of things that Bill wanted to talk about, just some projects and industries that have been impacted by our work. I'll show a couple clips here in a minute, and just maybe some sites. Many of the regions across the state have been looking at, and the nation, trying to attract a qualified workforce, because that is the issue these days, those that can attract the talent, win the economic development race, and we're more competitive and can compete on a global scale. And so we are looking at how do we attract the workforce. So we, like several other regions across the state, have created some sites that have really focused on quality of life and attracting that workforce. In addition to that, we've been looking at how do we attract, who are we attracting, and how are we being welcoming to new populations, and how do we retain that talent once it does come to our region. So, and how do we help that emerging populations that are coming to specifically central Minnesota figure out how to be engaged in our local units of government, nonprofits, and in our systems. And so workforce attraction has taken on a whole new effort, and of course we utilize all of the tools that we have via technology to make that happen. We've also been utilizing, I would say, the creative economy to help us attract a workforce that impact all of our other economies, whether those are healthcare or agriculture or manufacturing. There's a short little clip, if we have time, it's a second highlighted clip on that Word document, Bill, that where we utilized artists to help us create a program that does welcome people and addresses intercultural competency. So it's a mesh of utilization of technology and what we can use with technology with thinking about intercultural competency and attracting a workforce that maybe isn't already represented in our spaces. So That second highlighted link, if we can hit that one, Bill, that would be fun for, I think, the group to see, and we can talk a little bit about the agricultural economy.
Okay. Becky's doing some maneuvering here.
Maneuvering, okay. Well, while she's doing that, I'll segue in then. We also have utilized a lot of video, like many of you, to think about each of our agriculture, our sectors, and ag being one of the biggest ones in central Minnesota. Our largest gross domestic product is agricultural commodities. And so we have formed a food hub. Many of you have heard about that, called Sprout, where we've integrated arts, ag, and culture bears to help us maintain the agricultural economy. I use a lot of like planner, trendy kinds of gobbledygook words that just like flag me. Like, we don't know what you're talking about, Cheryl. Totally fine, I'll step back. But one of the videos that we did is a 20-second video that talks about a mobile grocery market that we're sending to food deserts and aggregating food from about 100 now, was 80 as of a year ago, but 100 low-income growers throughout the region. And so that's a way for us to utilize technology to talk about why that's important and how this mobile market is a new strategy to addressing prosperity in a specific industry. So if we don't hit that first one, Mayor, we certainly can hit that second one. Great. That welcoming communities little arrow there, Mary, up there, right there.
Yep, this one.
There, right there. That's one way we've been using technology through videos.
One moment, please. It seems like the sound isn't on.
What Bill wanted me to make sure that I was clear on is that this technology is utilized to connect folks to the region and within the region. Thank you.
Ready?
Area or industry is immune to economic and social challenges. The Region 5 Development Commission's Welcoming Communities program seeks to address these and other community needs. This initiative is designed to enhance workforce attraction and help communities be competitive. With a commitment to diversity, equity, and inclusion, the Welcoming Communities program promotes economic and social prosperity for everyone. Community-led advocacy groups, with Region 5 Development Commission assistance, help communities bridge intercultural differences while building on the community's assets. Each group defines and leads a project with financial investments from R5DC funding partners. Do you have a project idea that showcases your central Minnesota welcoming community? R5DC invites you to share your thoughts, get involved, or reach out to learn more.
So many of you are taking this strategy to utilize technology to promote a program that does something broader than just impact our business community. So that's more on a social context of community development. We've also been using more videos to share and learn opportunities to other industries. We did receive some funding and support from the Minnesota Department of Agriculture to offer workshops to food co-ops across the region. We thought that's cool, but it wouldn't be great if those workshops were archived so that all food co-ops and food access points across the state could learn from those training sessions. And so training is a way that we've also been utilizing technology. Go ahead, Mary.
Are you sure?
Sprout's Mobile Marketplace is a food hub on wheels, offering fresh produce, art opportunities, and other great products. Feed your family well. The Mobile Marketplace, coming to a neighborhood near you.
Thanks, Mary. That's all it will do you get the point. Those are some ways that we're utilizing technology. We're also utilizing it to fund projects. So the last two things I'll mention and turn this over to Kurt is that we started with a group out of Minneapolis through some support of USDA social crowdfunding campaigns. And those crowdfunding campaigns are being utilized like a Kickstarter or others to create projects for private sector partners and nonprofit sector partners where there is a social benefit to their work. And so Social crowdfunding is some work that we've been doing with the private and nonprofit sectors and utilization of technology for that. All of that's driven via the web, so that's been important. That's the things that Bill talked about riding the bike and learning how to ride the bike and changing that culture of the use of the bike. But we've also done some traditional economic development where we've done some grant writing and accessing of funding to support the infrastructure as well. So I love that we talked about the PCs for People's program, because that started us in that years ago through the BLandin Foundation. That's where we started to be like a fiscal host for projects like PCs for People to start out of the Brainerd area. So we acted in that way. And I like to say we either row or steer the ship, but we don't do both simultaneously. And so there is a role for us to play in access to technology for the infrastructure as well through a fiscal host. Lately, it's been very interesting to see other folks get on board with that. Land O'Lakes, which is the largest co-op in the nation, is actually looking at infrastructure for their members in one of our poorest counties, which is one of the 5 poorest counties in the state. And so they're looking at literally infrastructure. That's a very interesting kind of relationship. And then we also have one of your sponsors here today, Sourcewell, which is an educational cooperative, like we have them all over the state. And Sourcewell has invested $100,000 a year for the last 5 years to the co-ops, CTC included, Consolidated Telephone, West Central Telephone, others, where those dollars are used for engineering that allow for them to create applications for the state broadband program and be very competitive. And fortunately, we've been a recipient of the state broadband money every year that has been appropriated by the legislature. So we think that model is sort of working and has allowed us to start to get more participation from the private sector and from other entities like the co-ops and the educational co-ops. So I'll end with that. Bill, I think that was a quick snapshot, and there might be some questions.
Thank you. My name's Kirk. I am a economic development planner, regional economic development planner with the Upper Minnesota Valley Regional Development Commission. We cover a 5-county region in western Minnesota, Big Stone County, Swift, Black Paro, Yellow Medicine, and Chippewa. And as Bill pointed out, we've been pretty successful in our strategies to promote broadband deployment since the inception, and it's actually no accident, it was on purpose. Since the inception of the border-to-border broadband grant program, we supported 3 of our 5 counties in pursuing projects that were all funded and have been completed. And those counties, as Ann pointed out earlier in the conference, in the blog, 3 of those counties, Black Paro, Big Stone, and Swift, are now 3 of the top 10 counties in the state as far as access to broadband. So we're pretty proud of that. We've got 2 counties, however, that are still kind of at the bottom, and we continue to work on that. But it kind of goes to show with a well-defined strategy that looks at economic development in terms of technology as an advantage, what you can do. One of the things I wanted to talk about today is, so we do traditional economic development. We have strategies that we put in place on an annual and multi-year basis as an economic development organization. And a lot of that is traditional. We, as Bill pointed out, if you are able to advance technology within your region, if you don't use it, if you don't promote it, if you don't use those advantages to both inform your strategy and implement your strategy, that's really what it's all about. So I just kind of wanted to pick out some tidbits of things that we do that specifically leverage technology. One of the things that we use to define our economic development strategy as we go forward is a survey process that is sometimes annual, but we are required to do one every 5 years. And a few years back, we surveyed our region determined that the top issue identified was marketing of our communities and area to attract new residents, workers, and families. So in terms of technology, how do you do that? Who are you looking to attract? Who are you looking to recruit? And we utilized some specific information and some research that was done by Ben Winchester at the University of Minnesota, and it talked about brain gain. And what that research pointed out, that statistics show that although our bright and talented youth are leaving for college, there's an influx of 35 to 44-year-olds that are coming into the region, bringing their education, experience, wealth, and children. So, taking that into consideration, what kinds of things are important to them? What are they looking for? How do you attract them? And within our organization, for many years, we've had a tourism program called Prairie Waters. And that was very successful in bringing visitors to the region. But we know from some of the research that's been done is if you're going to come to a region, you're probably going to visit it first. So how can we leverage that as a tool to recruit those folks? So we've got, we expanded our Prairie Waters tourism program, which included a website and implemented a kind of a parallel strategy called Get Rural. And that focused on how do we attract these young families, young professionals, and capitalize on the technology that we've been able to develop in the region. So that's been successful. Similar to what Cheryl showed you, we've done some high-level video promotion for the area. We've had some drone footage, both video and still imagery, that allow us to capitalize on our website to promote the beauty of the area and the things that you can see and do. Specific strategies that have been impacted by availability of technology in the region. Housing is going to be important to anybody that's going to potentially be recruited to our region. So we try to focus on that. It's a part of our everyday strategy in terms of housing stock for the region and rehabilitation of existing housing stock, inventory of housing stock. And we, in the last few years, have leveraged technology to do that. We implemented a program last year to do individual community windshield surveys to analyze housing stock, and what the results of the data were to be used for was to access funding for rehabilitation. And how technology plays into it is we used mobile devices that were connected to ArcGIS online account using ArcGIS Collector to actually take the parcel data from the county and tie it to a survey of housing within the community. And we basically deployed people on the street, feet on the street, to with a mobile device to be able to assess housing stock throughout the entire community, and then utilize that data. That data has then been used since then to access funding through the state of Minnesota for the Small Cities Development Program, which allows you to rehabilitate housing stock and get some of that maybe substandard or dilapidated housing and bring it to a condition where a family might be interested in utilizing that, or coming to the area and purchasing one of those homes. A similar project that we've done on the commercial side is there are a lot of properties that are perhaps underutilized or vacant, and this happens within all regions. And put those into good use unless you can make people aware that they are available. So we partnered with the University of Minnesota Center for Small Towns to bring in some student interns to help us create an inventory. And once again, we utilize technology for that. We have a RTS online map that's going where the students are creating a data template to gather all the information about available properties for development. And we set it up in such a way that we can use the data for our purposes, but we can also, the communities that these properties are in can also upload their data to the state of Minnesota's lowest site selection database. So it allows for communication of information about those properties, and we intend to use that as well to not only market those properties, get them into a situation where they can be developed. The second phase of that project will actually utilize some graduate level students through the University of Minnesota School of Design to do some to select a select number of these properties, to do some visioning in the communities to hopefully tease out some good ideas about development for these properties that may already have been considered, or something that can spur development.
So interesting to hear both of you talking about the economic development is attracting people. You know, back when I worked, back in the old days when I worked at the state of Minnesota Department of Economic Development, it's all about attracting companies. And now this is a big flip. And one of his presentations, John Young from the Intelligent Community Forum talked about things to do that, you know, bright lights, big city kind of thing. How do you contrast that in a more rural setting? What do you see your communities or what is our regions doing to kind of highlight the things that are taking place?
So I mentioned, and I know that Get Rural is a site that's done in Kirk's region. We've done the Good Life site that really talks about all the things that people care about. Yes, is there access to broadband? Are there trails? Are there good schools? Are there amenities? Are there cultural activities? And so that is a strategy now as a result of the demographics and the shifts and what workers are looking for. And so that's definitely been an approach. And another thing that we've sort of done is to think about, you know, all of the regional development commissions across the state of Minnesota, including the West Central Initiative Foundation, have created a rural strategy called BLandin. It's on the Minnesota Association of Development Organizations website. MADO is the acronym. And in that statewide rural strategy, we talk a lot, and it's an economic development strategy, mind you, right? But there are a lot of quality of life and workforce attractions items within that 17 goal plan. And even within that plan, what we all have in common across the entire state are things like workforce attraction, renewable energy, agricultural sectors. There's some specific sectors we've pulled out. I think it's really important to mention that even like things like renewable energy industry, when we have sites like that, and we're talking about attracting a workforce, we also understand that in rural places, we need technology to be able to have education the way we want. So we're utilizing a couple of solar systems in our region and utilizing all the data from that to do STEM training in all 23 school districts and charter schools throughout the region. And so that's a way that we're able to share knowledge and be a place where families want to come, because it doesn't matter what school district they're in, their child is still going to have access to some great education, providing, yes, they have access to broadband. But where we're moving next, Bill's right. It used to be attraction of the company, now it's attraction of the workforce. And what we're thinking about now is who is that workforce, and what do our strategies align with the populations of which we're trying to include. So we are thinking more and more about multilingual applications. Kirk talks about some great opportunities around housing and dilapidated housing, and we do the same thing when it comes to business loans. But if all of those applications are in English, we do a couple of things. We while English is the primary language of our country, people who are emerging and coming, migrating to the country, who have an intellectual capacity to start a business may not be able to navigate the English-speaking systems to be able to have economic prosperity. So we are thinking more about to whom are we trying to attract and to bring into the economy, and what are our strategies? Are they aligned with non-English speaking or visually impaired folks, so that we have ADA compliant documents online, applications, and multilingual. If we are working with a tribe, and even though all of those folks speak English, for instance, the Leech Lake Band, which is in our 5-county region right here, it makes a lot of good cultural sense to bridge those economies and people by offering our applications in Anishinaabe as well as English. And so that sends a statement that you care about culture, and that's what engages people to participate in these systems that we have that provide economic opportunities. And so we are thinking different, Bill, where it used to be about business, and then it moved towards workforce attraction, and now we're thinking about, well, who is that worker that we're trying to attract, and are we doing that in a respectful and an easy process so that they can participate? So that's the evolution that I'm seeing in economic development that is transcending every single one of our industries. I would say the leading industry happens to be agriculture at this time. Very proud of the Minnesota Department of Agriculture for the first time ever offering some of their state grant applications in another language, of which they offered in Spanish. That's never happened in our state's history, and that's a result of us asking those kinds of questions about economic development.
Yeah, the strategies certainly have changed in recent years, and some of that's a function of the economy. It's if you talk to the employers within our region, they'll say one of the biggest challenges they face right now is finding workforce that is available and that they can hire and can grow within their industries. And even the types of training that can be provided to the workforce within our region is changing because of the demographics. Whereas the push in prior years may have been more towards 4-year degrees in highly technical fields, those technical fields now are in the trades, and there's shortages of workforce available in those trades. So there's a number of different initiatives out there that are looking to utilize technology and existing educational systems to train that workforce in the types of skills that they need to fill those jobs in the trades today. We work with a program called LIFT, Learn Your Future Today, I believe is what it stands for. It's a collaboration amongst various higher education institutions and school districts to get younger students, so students that are not yet college age, into programs working directly with industry to get trained on skills that they can then get jobs once they graduate from high school. And it's been really successful. It's the technology utilization is pretty significant, because when you're talking about a 5-county region, you may have one industry in one county that pulls workers from over the entire area. So you can't very well have high school age students driving all over a 5-county region to be able to go to get trained on certain technical fields. So technology is used to deliver that.
It's interesting. In Swift County, one of our broadband communities in one of your counties, they're a BLandin broadband community. They have dollars available for picking projects, and they came up with one that we first thought, well, does this really fit our program? And it was a Case IH, major employer in the county, needed welders. Okay, this is a broadband program. We're going to train welders, but of course it has online components, and amazing that through that program, for so little money, between the partnership of the county and the Broadband Communities Group, they were able to take 20 people, and even if the existing case employees get this welding certification and go from, I forget what it was, like $15 to $22 an hour difference. And you think, okay, $15 an hour is not great, $30,000. Add another $5 per hour, suddenly that's a pretty good job in an area where housing isn't all that expensive. Makes the affordable housing kind of issue for that family go away because they now have enough income to do that. But you think about the use of the technology to enable people to continue to do their day jobs, but to do the study they need to do during the week, and then bring on the weekend and then go for that intensive hands-on training. So that combination approach of the technologies. We'd like to have some discussion with the audience. Does anyone here have an example of how they're using technology to attract workers or brand their community or just, job training, any of those intelligent community items that they wanted to talk about that's making a difference? Connie?
There are high schools and college that are working together on driving simulators to train truck drivers.
Okay.
School truck drivers. And the simulators are just extremely helpful, and that's all on route driving.
That's really interesting, because we know the transportation industry is gonna be so changed due to technology. That we're using high-tech to train truck drivers that maybe there won't be that many truck drivers anymore when you have the trucks are going down the road using, GPS and wireless services to do that. But it's that's a cool project though. Others?
Hi, I'm Ann Bradford from Grand Right. And as a science writer in my main life, I read a lot about our artificial intelligence, and I'm just interested in building off your point, Bill, because you're leading up to electrical vehicles, where many people predict that these truck drivers are in for a surprise within the next decade, that there won't be this good job there currently is for them. I'm just curious how many of these communities are grappling with that. AI in general,
Yeah.
machine learning.
Anyone looking out there? They have good companies that are driving that technology that they're trying to support for their technical or other universities. There's a lot. I was fortunate earlier this spring, early summer, BLandin Foundation hosted a group to go to the Intelligent Community Conference in New York City, which super interesting set of topics that a lot of times we're kind of more grounded in what's happening today and what can we do today. But if you think about how you be a competitive region, you really have to be out there. You want to have those workers ready when that technology emerges, which is risky, it's expensive. But if you want to be seen as a center for the new technologies, you can't just be reactive. You have to try and lead and see where is the knowledge base. When I did the intelligent community application for Brainerd Lakes area a year ago, so I saw, well, where is the innovation in the higher education system in the Brainerd area? And it was really at the Staples campus around the agriculture. But as we work, many of you might be on advisory boards at your technical colleges, community colleges, universities, to push people to think, where do we, it's that whole Wayne Gretzky thing, right? You don't skate to where the puck is, you skate to where it's gonna be. And how do you do that in economic development? And if you listen to futurists, guys like Jim Benson, just follow him around, I think, and find what he's saying. And I don't know how active he is online or anything, but who are the people in your community that you can talk to that kind of see the future? What are the options? I really think that's important to do, and I think that all of us are too much grounded in the day-to-day, trying to solve today's problems, not really anticipating the trends.
Bill, it's not just AI that we need to think about in terms of looking at where the puck will be, it's also offshoring. So, are are we prepared and are we nimble enough within those training programs picked up to be able to navigate to those jobs of the futures where it's the yes and we have to address today's economies and our today's business needs, and we also need to think about what's coming down the pipe 10 years from now. But you're right, it's both of those two unintended consequences of today's technology revolution is sort of offshoring and AI are two things we have to think about.
And I would just add on one of those big things that you can see coming is the demographics. And we saw slides earlier in the conference about the aging of the workforce, but I think this is where Region 5 is right on the cultural competency. There's still a wave of people. The growing population is not Norwegians and Swedes. It is people of color, it's people from East Africa, it's Hispanic, and so we want our, I went to De La Salle High School in Minneapolis, and the alumni are Polish and immigrants from Northeast Minneapolis and North Minneapolis like myself, and they had a pretty bold president of the high school. He was hearing some grumbling about the changing demographics at De La Salle. A lot, it's 50% students of color. He said, he's looking out in the audience. He says, "Well, you were the people of color, 40 years ago. You were the Italians and the Polish, and so just get used to it and keep giving your money, because it's this is the way it is. This is the reality we're dealing with." And Tom Gillespie, who's kind of a famous former state demographer, in the 1980s, he was talking about workforce shortages coming in Minnesota. It's exactly true. The baby boomers are missing now from the workforce and increasingly absent, and this gap of workers and the need for this in rural Minnesota is incredible. Oh, yes. Who's Alyssa?
Sure. So in Northeast Minnesota, we have a program called North Force that's into its 6th year now and it's about attracting and retaining talent. And it's a web platform, but it has people behind it that are doing that work. And now we're at the point where we're able to use the massive amounts of data that we have to really identify pockets across the nation to target via social media and different technology to show them the type of jobs that are available in Minnesota to try to get them to move here. This is the first time we really had that massive data and to be able to use that technology to go after the people that are looking online at things, and then being able to target them based on where they're at in their lifespan, considering a move, things like that. So, and then it's allowing us to work within those communities, in our communities, around Iron Range Engineering and what they're doing, the Bell program, working with more of the kind of boots on the ground to really work on how we retain the talent that we have in the colleges. We have 10 different colleges and technical colleges in Northeast Minnesota, and probably 5 of them do a really good job of that, and the other 5 don't. So we're able to kind of use that data to say, here's what we're trying to help you do, how can we help? It's the first time we've been able to put data behind what we're saying, so it's pretty powerful.
Listen, are you
Collecting data on retention of those folks you're looking to attract yet?
You mean after they've moved
Yeah,
here?
yeah.
We know if they move to another job within the region, but we don't necessarily know if they leave, other than if they unsubscribe.
Great. That would be really interesting. You
Yeah.
see a lot of attraction programs, and we're trying to attract the workers, and yet it is so expensive to retrain and retrain and retain. And what I'm hearing is that those that aren't staying, that's not a cost-effective way to try to build economies, right? And from just a purely economic standpoint, and it's socially not very responsible either to bring folks to a region and attract them and have them actually hate it, they're not welcome, then they leave, and that's a problem, right? So I'm curious about those programs that are doing attraction, if they're starting to try to collect that data, which is hard to collect on retention.
What we've noticed is we've started to work a lot more with the traveling partner or spouse, because one individual is getting the job really smoothly, and then having that, we're actually working with their partner or the other that's coming with them to find them, help help them get in interviews and get connected, where that tends to be the harder piece, yeah.
They say that Minnesotans will give you directions to every place but their house. And the idea is that when you have people come into a community, especially, people who, former IRRB staffer Dick Nordvold used to say, well, I've been here 45 years, and they still say I'm a pack sack, or a 6-1 tour, things like that. It's all, it's kind of chuckly kind of thing, but that's not a very welcoming attitude. But I think that, on the other hand, Iron Range Group has a young professional group called Regen that does a lot of that meetup kind of activity, welcomes people and some things to do. And I think that's really a critical piece. Somebody moves to an area and they do their work and then they go home and, it's like, it's just, that retention is huge. It's just like if we're attracting a company, if you let them go out of business in 2 years, all that money's been wasted. Kate? You have to really speak up.
Sorry, I was just going to mention talking about diversity and the gaps that are kind of forming now with the big workforce. I think it's really interesting that
I think it's really interesting that some colleges are taking people from all over the world, and if they can't understand English perfectly, they get delivered through Broadband to, wherever they are in Minnesota, like full anatomy things where they can dissect, and then before they go into the lab, and so they learn the words and they know what they're doing before they even go into the lab, and they can recognize those words, and it's very helpful to having more doctors and having which are in such high demand. I mean, look at Duluth building a huge new extension. So I think it's in academia especially, it's helpful. Broadband is.
Thank you. And I know Angie Dickinson is here. She's going to talk next session, I think it is, around the new teleworker program that DEED is creating. So look forward to that in the next session. I think we're right at our time. So I want to thank our panelists, Kurt and Cheryl, and great information. And I think it's just something to think about as you're planning. We work so hard to get the technology in place, but how are we really going to use that to make a difference in our economy? And I think the economic developers have a strong place in pushing that agenda forward. I'd also, again, put in a pitch for that intelligent community framework to bring that to your community, to your county, to your region. Just start to think about the strengths and the gaps in those kind of activities. If you can't do it in your own community, how do you get it to do it in multi-school districts or across regions? Because we do know people will travel. Like today when we get home to the Twin Cities, some of us be fighting traffic, you get to Rogers and it'll be, so, but up here you can go an hour, you can go 70 miles, down there it might be an hour to go 3 miles. So people are willing to make the traveling time to work together across regions on some of these more advanced strategies. So thank you very much.